The new Toyota LandCruiser Prado 250 series. Where do I start? Literally. So this is an extensive model upgrade for one of Australia's most iconic SUVs, particularly in deserted areas. For this review, I'm going to spread it across 3 separate videos. I'm going to test 3 separate variants. This is the base model, start at the bottom, and then we're going to do the altitude and then the top Kakadu. For this video, I'm going to concentrate on the performance testing with some POV on-road stuff and then a little bit of off-road, just to give us a bit of a preview of the new model in its basic, cheapest form. And then with the altitude, I'll put together some virtual drag races, and we'll also do some more extensive off-roading, maybe a bit of rally testing, go off some jumps and so on. And then with the Kakadu, I'll do a full extensive review, including some exploring proper off-road tracks. Firstly, the new model is based on the TNGA-F platform, like the bigger brother, the 300 series. It is modified, obviously, so it's a little bit smaller. But it's completely new design, all new interior. Everything is new except for the powertrain, or parts of the powertrain. It does feature the mild hybrid powertrain, 2.8 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder, 150 kilowatts, 500 newton meters. No major change there. The generator, or the electric motor, is basically like a two-way alternator under the bonnet with a pulley running off it, and it just supplies a little bit of assistance, helps turn the motor over. It produces 8 kilowatts alone, but that doesn't actually add 8 kilowatts to the total figure of 150 kilowatts. So I argue that that's not enough power for a big vehicle like this. This is around 2.4 tons. I would like to see this, I would love to see Toyota introduce the Prado with even if it had to be detuned, version of the V6 diesel from the LandCruiser 300 series. What does the mild hybrid system do exactly? Well, it reduces emissions and fuel consumption on paper, which means potentially you should get lower consumption and emissions in the real world as well. Whether you do or not, I guess it doesn't really matter. If the numbers are reducing, I guess that's a good thing. I think Toyota could have done more, especially as they have extensive experience building hybrids, but I don't know why they didn't do a full hybrid system with this. Maybe in Australia, they found that their customers still love old school diesels, but fitting a mild hybrid system, I think it's a bit of a half-assed attempt. But anyway, on paper, the consumption is reduced from 7.9 litres per 100 to 7.6, and then emissions are reduced from 209 grams per kilometre to 200 grams per kilometre. That's comparing the equivalent base spec GX model like this. Touching on the design, I think it looks really cool. It looks a bit retro, but also very unique. I like that every single panel matches the other panels, like it's all very consistent. It's got that definite chunky, blocky kind of theme to it. I think it works. With the base spec GX, you do get different trims and so on, and you get these 18-inch alloy wheels wearing all-terrain tyres as standard. All of the variants do look pretty similar, except for the Kakadu. That definitely stands out. It's a little bit more premium and luxurious. It's got color-coded skirting and all that sort of stuff. Prices have jumped up quite a bit, like most products these days, by about 10 grand. So the previous model was around 62,000. This is now 72,000. Yeah, 62,830 was the previous model, the 2023 or MY24, and then this is 72,500. So pretty much exactly $10,000 more. Towing capability has improved. It used to be 3 tons, now 3.5 tons. A lot of the changes are also found inside as well. This is a completely overhauled interior. It's a little bit more practical, but also a bit more modern, and it's got that rugged theme going on, matching the exterior. A bit more space around the center console. This has got a blank spot for where a wireless charger does go in upper spec models, but at least you've got a spot for your phone, dual cup holders, and a big center console box. I actually really like these cloth seats. I'm a fan of cloth seats in general, actually, except if you're planning to do a lot of off-roading, because these are going to get dusty and mucky pretty easily, and they're harder to clean. I mean, you can use those wet vacuum cleaners to really get all the dust out of them, but it's not as easy as wiping down a leather or vinyl seat. The engine does sound a little bit rattly and a bit noisy when it's cold, but once it's warmed up, it's actually not too bad. And when you're driving along the highway, it's pretty refined for a diesel, even though it's got that extra mechanical load of the mild hybrid system. It's actually pretty smooth and quiet. Just on the spot, there's a little bit of clattering going on, but as it's warmed up now, it's not really that bad, I don't think, compared with other rivals. Twin digital screens now. You've got a few different display options and you can play around with the vehicle safety settings there. And then you've got a big widescreen touchscreen on the dashboard. Now this is the latest Toyota Lexus system. I'm not a huge fan because of all the blank space that a lot of these menus have. I mean, you can connect Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and it just displays a grid of your compatible apps. So you don't have to worry about it too much if you are using those connectivity functions, but as standard, this native system is just a little bit basic in my opinion. I do love that Toyota has kept the climate control options separate down here. All of the functions are there. Air recirculation, air conditioning, temperature, fan speed, it's all there. You don't have to worry about digging into that screen. Then you've got a variety of options for charging and connecting your phone and so on. And your drive modes down here, a center diff lock. This is full-time four-wheel drive. You've got low range and high range, that's it. Then you've got a drive mode select toggle here with normal, sport and eco. In the back, it's kind of like the 70 series in that the seat is quite high mounted, which is, you know, a sacrifice of having good ground clearance and a ladder frame chassis because everything just gets pushed up. But yeah, it's not as spacious as you might expect, and certainly looking at the exterior, this looks like a very big vehicle. I mean, I've got plenty of headroom and more than enough legroom in my seating layout. But the center seat does have this weird console or plastic cover, which I guess is good because it means the person that's sitting there is not going to scuff up all the corners of the console here with carpet. But it just seems quite tight. If I'm sitting here, yeah, my feet are very high, and my knees are very high, sorry. It's just not super comfortable for a vehicle of this size, or this category even. I love that car makers are going with a upright cabin orientation with some of their SUVs. This is what I used to call a four-wheel drive back in the 90s when I was younger. So you've got big windows, you can easily see over the windowsill, and actually drops down a bit there too. Kids are gonna feel comfortable and happy back here because they can see straight out of there and not feel claustrophobic like they've been stuffed into the dungeon in the back. It actually feels quite open and airy and spacious. You've got twin grab handles for off-roading, one on the ceiling and one on the B-pillar. And you do have a flip-down armrest with cup holders, even in the base spec model. Now up at the back, there's been some talk about reduced boot space, and it is reduced, but it is hard to find the exact figure. Toyota says some figures, and then there's other figures out there from overseas. There's different measuring standards, obviously, but to me that looks pretty big. It looks like a large SUV. It's just the floor is quite high. It's got this big chunk of a area there, which is where I think some of the electrical components are stored for the mild hybrid system. You do have a little tray at the back, or trough at the back, so you can stuff some wet items in there. And you do have a full-size spare wheel under the floor, underneath the outside of the vehicle. You've also got a power socket, Australian outlet plug, 220 volts, 100 watts. And the GX is 5-seat only, at least in Australia. So you've got these wasted cup holders, which I guess you could use to store smaller items if you don't want them bouncing around in the boot. I'll flash up some figures now for you regarding the boot space, but keep in mind there's different measuring standards even compared with the old model. So it's hard to compare exactly, but basically the old model offered 120 litres with 3 rows up, 620 litres with 2 rows up, and then 1800 litres with just the front row. So both rear rows folded down. The new one is 104, 553 and 974. I don't know why 974 is the max figure. Obviously there'd be a bit more than that, but I'll try and find some exact figures for you. Just before we get into the drive, actually, I wanted to talk about something quickly with this initial review. You may have seen a video by Car Sales recently. They reviewed one of these new Prados, took it off-road, and went through a puddle or a creek crossing or something. Now, I don't know the full details, but apparently some water got up through a hose that leads to the, like a vacuum hose, that leads to the mild hybrid generator, causing it to make contact with the electronics. The electronics basically packed up and went home and said, you know what, we're shutting this whole thing down. So the car was not driving anymore. I think the worst part about that whole problem was the way Toyota responded. They, as far as I know, said car sales went through the puddle too quickly or went through the creek crossing too quickly. Now, I'm sure if I dig around, I can find an old TV ad or some promo images by Toyota showing a Toyota going through, being launched into a puddle of some sort. So I don't think that's a good enough reason. I don't think that's an excuse. Now, Toyota is the biggest vehicle brand in Australia. They sell the most vehicles, new vehicles, out of anyone, by twofold actually, compared with the runner-up. So they've got a lot of loyal buyers and loyal fans. I think the better way to respond to that situation would have been to just put their hand up and say, you know what, we tested this in extensive off-road conditions in all kinds of scenarios, but obviously we missed the exact scenario that car sales put the vehicle through. So what we're going to do is announce a free recall where we'll install a one-way valve or water separator or whatever in that hose so it doesn't happen again. I think Australians would have loved that. That sort of, you know, no, not too much pride kind of thing. Just, yeah, get on with it and fix it. You know, don't blame them. Don't get on the defense and blame someone else for a potential problem. It wouldn't be that hard to fix, especially as the vehicle is still new. There's not that many on the road. I mean, there's quite a few on the road already, but another 2 years, there'll be thousands of these things on the road. I just think that they could have handled that a lot better, especially being Toyota, such a reputation to hold on to. Australians, as I said, would have loved that they just went, if they just said, you know what, we made a little mistake, it's a new engine, there's still some teething problems, let's just get on top of this right now. It's very easy to drive. Like the previous model, it's smooth and relatively quiet, as I said. I don't feel intimidated to drive it at all. Like even though it is pretty big, it just feels family friendly. One thing I do notice though is the windscreen is not very tall. Like it's actually quite a narrow gap there. I didn't really notice it on the Lexus GX, which shares the same body, the same structure. You can even tell by the side window here drops right down there, and then it's like a big step up to where the bottom of the windscreen is. In saying that though, visibility is still excellent. Like I've got a great commanding view. I'm pretty high up compared with other motorists, and there's a nice big gap between the pillar and the mirror there, so there's no nervousness around this area. I've got a good feeling or a good understanding of what's around here. There's no blind spot really, so that's great. Even out the back it is pretty good, although the waistline or the belt line does rise up a bit, as we saw from the back door. So the furthest most window is not quite as large as maybe the predecessor, but still I've got a pretty good understanding. And since the vehicle is so square, you kind of know that, you know, the panel just goes straight down basically, so you know where the corners are. In terms of ride quality, yeah, it is a little bit jiggly. It's a bit heavy duty, I guess. That rear bench is rattling a little bit as well. It's just sort of shuddering back and forth. But I think it's okay. Like you could do some touring in this, and it's not like a dual cab ute with leaf springs. It's absorbing the bumps. The actual handling though, and the steering, yeah, it feels pretty good. It's very flat across the front end. I could take this on a nice winding road and not feel like I'm driving a truck. It's handling quite well for its class. I think the Everest is, yeah, it's probably on par with the Everest, and then just a slight edge in front of the MUX, sorry, not the D-Max, the MUX, just because it's a wider stance, I guess, and it's just got that extra stability of that. In terms of the kickdown, I'll just slow down a little bit, full throttle. Yeah, it goes okay. You can kind of feel a bit of a surge going on, maybe from that electric motor, maybe, but it's 8 kilowatts, about 65 Newton meters. It's probably not going to add all that much, but yeah, it might be the turbocharger. There's definitely some little surge just pushing it along, helping with the top end. In terms of fuel economy, I'm averaging 10.4 litres per 100, which is not bad, I think, for a big vehicle like this. The performance is okay, as you'll see, for this class, for a 4-cylinder diesel, it's not too bad. So the fuel economy to performance ratio is about average for this class. As you can see, we're driving on a pretty bad road right now, and yeah, it's handling it fine. It's just a little bit of shuddering going on, particularly from the back end. But all in all, I think it's pretty comfortable. If you loaded it up with some kids or put a caravan on the back or something like that, I think that'll actually nicely settle the whole thing. We'll see how it goes off-road now and see what sort of flex you can get from the suspension, and then we'll do the performance test. Okay, so this is my new little benchmarking proving ground, I guess. It's not a very scenic area. In fact, a lot of people have dumped rubbish around, which is not good, because if they keep doing that, then they're going to close this whole place down. Now, I don't know who owns it, but I'm pretty sure you're allowed to be in here. There's no gate or anything like that. But anyway, we can take on a few of these different little steep inclines here. Don't know about the one on the left just here with all the moguls in it, but we can certainly take on a couple of different lines in this one, and then over to the side as well. I've tested the D-Max dual cab chassis so far up here, but going forward I'll try and test all of the kind of rugged off-roaders to see how they compare. So not saying this is the most extreme off-road track you can ever see, but it's a good sort of benchmark, so we can see how they handle. I like coming here too because there's not too many, well, there are no jagged rocks or anything that can potentially damage the vehicle. It's more about suspension flex and how the drive system can manage wheel spin, because you get a lot of wheels off the ground and so on. So it's interesting to see how the vehicles can handle it. As I said, this has got full-time four-wheel drive. I'll just leave it in the default mode. I'll even leave the stability and traction control on to start with and see how it goes. I'll go up the sort of easiest line where I just go up here and then veer over to the middle. I don't have it in low range, but I will try low range. Nice and steady. It is very steep. It probably doesn't look like it on camera as usual. Oh, stability control coming in, or traction control cutting in. But it's sorting it out. Oh, there we go. It's definitely having a bit of a problem getting up that bit. So the D-Max also had an issue at this exact same spot. What happens is the front wheel on the left is very compressed, and then the back wheel on the left is unweighted completely, and the same with the front right is kind of unweighted as well. So it's really pivoting on just two diagonal wheels. So what I'll do is hit the center diff lock. You might have to put it in low range for that. Oh no, we've got the center diff lock engaged in high range. I'll see how that goes. I might just turn the traction completely off and see how we go. Definitely still spinning a fair bit. So now I'll try low range and see how that goes. Definitely spinning quite a bit. It needs a limited slip diff at the back or a locking diff at the back, I think. I might actually put it back into high range and then put stability control back on. It's already turned back on, and just see if it can figure itself out. Nice and easy. You can see it's flickering away, but that's definitely... Oh, there we go. Yep. Okay, so it struggled quite a bit, still struggling. Yeah, it's not getting up here, not without some effort anyway. So it definitely needs a rear diff lock, I think, or at least a limited slip differential. I'll just give it one more go. Sliding backwards even with the brake pedal on, so that gives you a bit of an idea of how steep it is. Now, it's interesting that the D-Max got up here pretty easily because, well, not easily actually, but with the diff locked engaged and then the rough terrain mode, which kind of adds traction control to the front axle even with the diff locked. Whereas this, it's yeah, definitely very struggling quite a bit even with the center diff locked. I'm sure if I use a bit of momentum I can probably get up here. But a little bit disappointing considering this does have all-terrain tyres on it. Yeah, it's definitely struggling. Okay, we might have to try a different line. So as you can see, it doesn't look that bad, but just it's putting it under a lot of diagonal pressure. So I'll take a slightly different line. Still got the center diff lock engaged. I'll keep the momentum going this time as well, and I'll avoid two of those little ditches. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. There we go. So with a better line, or an easier line, it did actually make it up there. I'll try that other line now and just see how it goes, but I don't think it will go too well, but we'll try it out anyway. Just keep in mind that this is the base model. If you do want to do some more serious off-roading, I think the Kakadu does come with more off-road features and so on, including it's got those sway bars that you can kind of disconnect. Lifting the back wheel a little bit there. Just, you might have seen then the cameras came up. They are good off-road cameras. I think you can activate those somehow. Yeah, and you get a good view. So the car actually disappears as well, so you can see through and see where the tires are, which is excellent. Some of them just stay like that, where it's just a black patch, so you don't exactly know what you're running over. Whereas this, with that transparent view, you know exactly what you're, you know exactly where your wheels are falling. So I went up this right-hand side with the D-Max. It's pretty serious in terms of those moguls, and they're strategically placed where there's one at the back, one diagonally at the front there, and then another one. It's almost like someone's actually made it on purpose to be a bit of a challenge, but I don't think this is going to go up here. We'll try it out anyway. Keep the momentum going. Yeah, struggling a little bit there. Yeah, no. There we go, it's giving you a bit of an idea of how steep it is. Steep slope, park on flat road. Keep going. I've got the stability control still turned on, remember? It's definitely spinning. Even though the center diff is locked, two opposing wheels can still spin at the same speed. They're locked together, but yeah, if they're both off the ground diagonally, then it's just, you get this situation where it just continues to spin. Just going to try low range again, just to make sure. Let's take it really slow. Yeah, straight away. I've got something happening here. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's trying to sort it out. There we go. Okay, so in low range, that time I didn't turn any stability. I didn't push the stability button at all, but as you might have seen then, it was flashing something. So it might have like a similar kind of rough terrain mode as the Isuzu, just in a different mechanism. I'll flash up any official material now explaining what that is, but I didn't know it had that. So it does actually go up if you leave, if you stay away from the traction button. So I'll go back around and do that first line again in this same mode. It doesn't seem to have any problem with clearances. I'm going to tip the back wheel a little bit here in the air. Yep. It doesn't seem to have any problem with clearances or the approach and departure angle. It's just the drive system is not as quick to react as you might expect. Considering this is the base model though, so if you really want to do some off-roading, work up the class a little bit and then you'll get access to more features. We'll try this first line again in the same mode as just before and see if that makes any difference, and we'll let the stability control, the traction control do its thing. So same line. This is where it started to spin a bit. Yep. You got the light flashing, it's grabbing it and pushing it. There we go. Yep. You can hear the brakes coming on, sending or causing power to be sent to other wheels. There we go, it does actually go up. That was a bit my mistake, I had it in the wrong mode. I do think it would benefit from a rear diff lock though. I think you could get up this a bit easier. It's really relying on the electronics here. Even with the center diff locked and in low range, there is some stability or traction management system going on, braking the wheels, like putting the brakes on certain wheels to cause it to send power to other wheels, which it's effective. It gets up. But I think I'd rather have mechanical traction. So I'd rather have limited slip diff at the back. I think that would really help, or a locking diff at the back. Overall though, I think it's done pretty good as a base model. We'll go and check out the performance now, and then yeah, stay tuned for future reviews of the altitude model and then a serious review with the Kakadu.